My dad used the last of my college fund for Veronica's breathing surgery. When I asked him why, he said, "You'll understand when you're older." I just stared at him. That was 14 months ago. Yesterday, she scrolled through my phone, locked herself in the bathroom, and hasn't come out since. I knew my stepmom stole my college fund for plastic surgery. What she didn't know was that I'd been recording everything for months. When Dad introduced Veronica as his wellness coach, Mom's eye twitched. 20 years of marriage, and suddenly he needed help optimizing his life energy. Mom had been pulling double shifts as an ER nurse since I was born, saving every penny for college. Originally, it was for her. Now, it was for me. Dad's new girlfriend was 28, posted daily gym selfies, and called me sweetie at graduation, in front of everyone. 3 months later, Dad moved out. Mom found the credit card statements, $30,000 on Veronica's business ventures, chakra crystals, failed yoga studio, all from their joint accounts. She accidentally broke Mom's MIT alumni mug while helping Dad pack. Oops, so clumsy. The divorce lawyer's words still haunt me. The college fund is a marital asset. Your father is entitled to half. Mom gripped my hand so hard during the ruling, her wedding ring left a mark. It was the last time she wore it. The judge ruled Dad needed both signatures to access it, but that meant I needed his cooperation for MIT. Dad married Veronica the day the divorce finalized. She immediately developed chronic anxiety, requiring weekly spa treatments. Then came the breathing problems. Dad would text me, "At least Veronica appreciates what I provide. Your mom just doesn't understand manifestation, sweetie." Mom started working nights, weekends, holidays. I'd find her asleep over loan applications, pen still in hand. Veronica redecorated our kitchen, throwing out Mom's things, posted Instagram photos from Cabo. MIT acceptance arrived in March. I needed $40,000 by May. Mom could access her $20,000, but Dad's signature meant dealing with Veronica. She touched her nose delicately. "I actually need emergency surgery. Deviated septum, can barely breathe." She suggested I consider community college to save money. The surgery estimate was exactly $20,000. I watched Dad sign the withdrawal papers. Veronica emerged 2 weeks later with a new nose, larger chest, and a flat stomach. "The breathing surgery had complications," she explained, modeling her new body. "They had to do reconstructive work." MIT's deadline passed. Mom sobbed for 3 days straight, then stopped showing up for shifts. Dad filed for emergency custody. "She's having a breakdown. It's not safe for you." Veronica fake cried during the hearing about Mom's erratic behavior and obsession with college, called her bitter. The judge granted Dad temporary custody. I packed without fighting. Mom begged me not to go. "I'll be fine. Focus on getting better." Living with them was hell. Veronica's perfume contaminated everything. She was pregnant, planning to use my remaining funds for the nursery. But I played the perfect stepdaughter, complimented her skin, asked about her wellness tips. She started trusting me with everything. Her phone, laptop, even banking apps. 3 months of screenshots, surgery receipts, real costs versus what she told Dad, texts to someone named Lucas about their long con. Almost got caught once. She walked in while I was screenshotting. I quickly switched to Instagram. "Just admiring your Cabo pics. You're being so mature about this." Veronica smiled, handing me her phone. "Can you take a photo by the pool for my wellness Instagram?" The next day was her scheduled C-section. Dad would sign papers giving her full access to their accounts for medical emergencies. She didn't know about the email sitting in my drafts. Every receipt, every lie, every text to Lucas. Ready to send to Mom and Dad's divorce lawyer, Dad's boss, and the IRS. I couldn't wait until everything would change. The email would expose her tax fraud, her real boyfriend, her surgeries. I attached the final piece of evidence, a screenshot of Veronica's text to Lucas from last week. "Almost there, baby. Just need the C-section signatures and we're set for life." My finger hovered over the send button as I sat in the hospital waiting room. The maternity ward buzzed with activity around me. Nurses rushed past with clipboards while other families celebrated new arrivals. Dad paced near the vending machines, checking his phone every few seconds. Veronica had been in pre-op for 20 minutes. I pulled up the hospital's Wi-Fi login page. The connection showed full bars. Perfect timing. I opened my email app and watched the draft load with all 43 attachments, bank statements, surgery receipts, text conversations. Everything organized chronologically with clear labels. The Wi-Fi suddenly dropped. No connection. I refreshed the page. Nothing. I tried switching to cellular data, but the hospital's concrete walls blocked the signal. My phone showed one bar that flickered in and out. Dad approached with 2 cups of coffee. He handed me one and sat down heavily in the plastic chair beside me. The coffee tasted burnt, but I sipped it anyway. He rubbed his temples and glanced at his watch. "They said the C-section should take about an hour," he mentioned while scrolling through his phone. "Veronica's mom is on her way." I nodded and tried the Wi-Fi again. Still nothing. The login page wouldn't even load now. I stood up and walked toward the hallway, holding my phone high to catch a signal. A nurse gave me a stern look and pointed to a sign about cell phone use. Back in the waiting room, Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He cleared his throat and pulled out a folder from his jacket. "Actually, I need to talk to you about something." He opened the folder to reveal bank documents. I recognized the account numbers immediately. The remaining college bonds Mom had fought to protect. My stomach tightened as I saw the withdrawal forms. "The baby's going to need a lot of things," Dad explained, sliding the papers toward me. "Veronica found some complications with her insurance coverage. We need to access these funds for medical expenses." The forms required my signature as a co-owner. Mom had insisted on that during the divorce, a small protection she'd managed to secure. I stared at the amount, $15,000, the last of my college money. "I thought Veronica's insurance covered everything," I said carefully, keeping my voice neutral. Dad's jaw tightened. "There are always unexpected costs. You'll understand when you're older." My phone buzzed. A text from Sandra, Mom's best friend. "Urgent. Found perfect apartment for your mom. Landlord needs lease signed today by 3 p.m. or we lose it. Can you help? Your mom's not answering." I checked the time, 1:47 p.m. The apartment was across town, at least a 30-minute drive. Mom had been searching for affordable housing since losing the house. This was her chance to move somewhere safe, away from the motel where she'd been staying. Another buzz, this time from the hospital's patient portal app. Veronica had added me as an emergency contact. A notification popped up about pre-operative preparations. I clicked through and saw a video feed option for family members. I opened the link. Veronica appeared on screen, lying in the hospital bed. She looked smaller without her usual makeup and styled hair. Her hands moved frantically across the blankets, searching for something. "Where is it? Where's my bracelet?" she asked the nurse. Her voice sounded different, higher, more panicked. The nurse tried to calm her down. "We have all your belongings in a safe place. You'll get everything back after surgery. No, you don't understand. I need it. It's my lucky bracelet. Veronica's breathing quickened. She rubbed her nose bridge, a nervous habit I'd noticed before, the same spot where her old nose used to be. Through the video, I could see her personal items in a clear plastic bag on the side table. Her purse sat next to it, partially open. Something caught my eye, a small card sticking out. Even through the grainy video, I could make out part of the text. Couples workout special. Dad noticed me watching and leaned over. She's been so anxious about this surgery. That bracelet was a gift from her late grandmother. I knew that was a lie. I'd seen her buy it at Target 2 months ago, but I kept quiet and tried the Wi-Fi again. Still dead. The coffee tasted worse with each sip. Dad kept glancing at the withdrawal forms. So, about these signatures. I'm just worried about the baby, I said, which was partly true. My half-sister didn't ask to be born into this mess. Dad's face softened. That's sweet, but Veronica and I have everything under control. You don't need to worry about our finances. A passing nurse overheard and smiled at Dad. Such a protective big sister already, though it's natural for teens to feel a bit jealous when a new baby arrives. Dad nodded knowingly at her. We've been preparing for some adjustment issues. My phone buzzed again. Sandra, please respond. Your mom needs this apartment. Landlord is showing it to others at 3:30. I stood up. I need to use the bathroom. I walked down the hallway, trying every corner for cell signal. Nothing. The email sat in my drafts, useless without internet. I found a family lounge with computers, but they required a hospital login. When I returned, Dad was filling out insurance paperwork. Veronica's mother had arrived, a woman who looked like an older version of her daughter, complete with obvious cosmetic work. She air-kissed my cheek and immediately started taking photos of the maternity ward for social media. Isn't this exciting? She gushed. A new baby. And Veronica's been so brave with all her health issues. I watched the pre-op video feed again. Veronica was still agitated about the bracelet. The nurse had given her something to calm down, but she kept touching her nose, rubbing that same spot. My phone showed 2:15 p.m. Sandra had sent 3 more texts. Mom needed help. The apartment was her only option after weeks of searching, but if I left now, I'd miss my chance to send the email when the Wi-Fi returned. Hospital systems usually reset every few hours. Dad noticed my phone checking. Everything okay? Just Mom's friend asking about something, I said vaguely. His expression hardened. Your mother needs to stop involving you in adult problems. This is exactly why the custody changed. Veronica's mother chimed in while scrolling through her phone. Poor thing. It must be so hard dealing with a bitter ex-wife. Veronica told me all about the harassment. I bit my tongue and looked at the withdrawal forms still sitting on the coffee table. $15,000. Every penny Mom had protected. The video feed showed nurses preparing Veronica for surgery. She'd calmed down but kept asking about the bracelet. In the background, I could see her purse had shifted. The gym membership card was now fully visible. Couples workout special. Lucas and Veronica. I glanced at Dad. He was focused on his phone, probably texting work about taking time off. This was my chance. I stood up casually and walked toward the pre-op area, pretending to look for a water fountain. The automatic doors were locked, requiring a key card, but I could see through the small window. Veronica's room was 3 doors down. Her belongings still sat on the side table. A nurse approached from behind. Can I help you? Just looking for my stepmom's room. She's having a C-section. The nurse smiled sympathetically. Family can't enter pre-op, but you can watch through the video feed. She'll be in surgery soon. I returned to the waiting room, 2:32 p.m. Mom's apartment opportunity was slipping away, but that gym card could prove Veronica's relationship with Lucas. One photo would add crucial evidence to my email. I'm going to get some air, I told Dad. Don't go far. Veronica will want to see you after surgery. I found an exit and stood outside, finally getting 2 bars of cell signal. I tried sending the email, but the attachments were too large for the weak connection. Oh wow, this is getting so intense. The way Dad just expects her to sign away $15,000 like it's nothing while Mom is stuck in a motel desperately needing an apartment is making my heart race here. It would take 20 minutes to upload. Sandra called immediately. Where are you? Your mom's having a panic attack about this apartment. I'm at the hospital. Dad's wife is having surgery. Can you meet us there? The landlord seems nice, but he needs the lease signed in person. Your mom's scared to go alone. I knew why. Mom had been fragile since the custody ruling. She needed support for something this big, but if I left now, I'd miss any chance to document that gym card, and the Wi-Fi might come back while I was gone. Please, Sandra continued. She's been sleeping in her car some nights when the motel gets too rough. This apartment is safe and affordable. My phone showed 2:41 p.m. If I left now, I could just make it. But Veronica would be out of surgery by the time I returned. Her belongings would be back in her possession. The evidence would be gone. I made my choice. I rushed back inside and grabbed my jacket from the waiting room chair. Dad looked up from his phone with raised eyebrows. I explained that Mom needed help with an urgent apartment situation. His face darkened immediately. He stood up and blocked my path to the exit. The withdrawal forms crinkled in his hand as he waved them at me. I could see Veronica's mother watching us with interest from across the room. She lowered her phone slightly, probably hoping for drama to post about later. I tried to step around Dad, but he moved with me. He started lecturing about priorities and family loyalty. His voice carried across the waiting room. Other families glanced our way. A pregnant woman shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Dad's face grew redder as he spoke about how I was choosing my unstable mother over my new sister. My phone vibrated constantly in my pocket. Sandra's texts. The apartment deadline approaching. I pulled it out to check the time. 2:48 p.m. Dad snatched the phone from my hand and scrolled through the messages. His expression shifted from anger to disgust as he read Sandra's pleas for help. He handed the phone back and pulled out his own. I watched him type rapidly. Within seconds, my phone buzzed with a message in the family group chat. Dad had written a long paragraph about my concerning behavior and lack of support for Veronica during her medical emergency. Veronica's mother immediately liked the message and added crying emoji reactions. The video feed on the waiting room TV showed Veronica being wheeled towards surgery. She was still asking about her bracelet, her hands fluttering nervously. The anesthesia mask covered her face, but I could see her eyes darting around. She suddenly grabbed the nurse's arm and pulled her close, whispering something urgently. The nurse nodded and patted her hand reassuringly. Dad sat back down heavily and gestured for me to join him. I remained standing, calculating the time. If I left right now, drove fast, I could still make it. But Dad had positioned himself between me and the exit. Veronica's mother had moved closer, pretending to admire baby photos on the wall while obviously eavesdropping. My phone rang. Sandra's name flashed on the screen. Dad watched me decline the call. She immediately called again. This time I answered, turning slightly away from Dad. Sandra's voice was strained as she explained that Mom was having a breakdown in the parking lot. The landlord was getting impatient. They needed me there. Dad grabbed my wrist and pulled the phone away, ending the call. He pocketed my phone and crossed his arms. Veronica's mother approached with a sympathetic expression that didn't reach her eyes. She started talking about how difficult blended families could be, how natural jealousy was, how therapy had helped her friend's daughter accept a new sibling. I felt trapped between them. The exit blocked. My phone confiscated. The clock on the wall showed 2:54 p.m. Mom's apartment chance was slipping away with each second. I made a sudden move toward the exit, but Dad caught my arm. His grip was firm but not painful, just enough to stop me. A security guard noticed our interaction and started walking over. Dad immediately released my arm and smiled at the guard, explaining we were just having a family moment before his wife's C-section. The guard nodded but stayed nearby, watching. I couldn't make a scene without looking like the problem child Dad was painting me as. Veronica's mother suggested we all sit down and pray for a successful surgery. She took my hand and Dad's, forming a circle. Her grip was surprisingly strong. As she prayed loudly about family unity and new beginnings, I watched the clock tick past 3 p.m. The apartment deadline had passed. My phone buzzed in Dad's pocket. Once, twice, 3 times. He ignored it. Veronica's mother finished her prayer and hugged me tightly, whispering that everything would work out if I just accepted God's plan for our family. Her perfume was suffocating, the same brand Veronica wore. The surgery waiting screen updated. Veronica was now in the operating room. Estimated time, 45 minutes. Dad finally returned my phone. 17 missed calls from Sandra. Dozens of texts. The last one simply said the landlord had given the apartment to another applicant. Mom was inconsolable. I sank into the plastic chair, staring at the screen. Dad patted my shoulder and said this was for the best, that Mom needed to learn independence. Veronica's mother agreed, adding that enabling Mom's helplessness wasn't healthy. They started discussing post-surgery plans, ignoring my presence entirely. The withdrawal forms still sat on the coffee table. Dad pushed them toward me again, along with a pen. He explained that signing was the mature thing to do, that the baby deserved security. I stared at the papers, seeing Mom's 20 years of savings reduced to a signature line. My phone buzzed with a notification from the family group chat. Veronica's mother had posted a photo of the 3 of us from moments ago. In it, I looked sullen while they smiled. The caption read about praying for family healing and accepting God's timing. Comments poured in from Dad's relatives about how difficult I was being, how lucky I was to have such patient stepfamily. I opened my email app, hoping the hospital Wi-Fi had returned. Still nothing. The draft sat there with all its attachments. Useless. I tried the cellular data again, but could barely load a web page. The evidence remained trapped on my phone while Veronica's narrative spread through social media. A nurse appeared and announced that Veronica's surgery was progressing well. Dad jumped up to ask questions while Veronica's mother filmed him for her Instagram story. I heard her narrating about what a devoted husband he was, how blessed Veronica was to have found him after her difficult past. I knew Veronica's difficult past was entirely fabricated. She'd grown up wealthy, attended private schools, never worked a real job, but her mother sold the story convincingly. I watched her post the video and saw the likes accumulate immediately. The family narrative was being rewritten in real time. My phone rang. Mom's number. I answered quickly before Dad could stop me. Her voice was broken, barely audible. She apologized for needing help, for being a burden, for failing me. I tried to reassure her, but she kept apologizing. In the background, I could hear Sandra trying to comfort her. Dad noticed my conversation and frowned. He made a cutting gesture across his throat. I told Mom I had to go, but would call her later. She whispered that she loved me before hanging up. The silence after felt heavy. Veronica's mother had befriended another expectant grandmother in the waiting room. They were exchanging photos and stories. I heard her describing me as troubled but improving with their influence. The other woman nodded sympathetically and shared her own stepfamily challenges. Their conversation painted me as the problem, Veronica as the solution. I stood up and walked to the bathroom, needing space. In the mirror, I looked exhausted. 3 months of evidence gathering, playing the perfect stepdaughter, watching Veronica manipulate everyone, and for what? The email remained unsent. Mom had lost her housing opportunity, and I was about to sign away the last of my college funds. When I returned, Dad had spread out more papers on the coffee table. Insurance forms, medical directives, emergency contact updates, all requiring my signature to add Veronica as primary decision maker for my healthcare. He explained it was routine, just updating family records for the new baby. I read through each form carefully. Hidden among the standard clauses were permissions for Veronica to access my medical records, make educational decisions, and act as my guardian in Dad's absence. Signing would give her more control over my life than Mom currently had. The surgery screen updated again, 30 minutes remaining. Dad grew impatient with my reading and started tapping the signature lines. Veronica's mother mentioned how her daughter had spent hours preparing these forms to protect our family. The manipulation was masterful, making Veronica's power grab seem like maternal concern. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I opened it to find a message from my old neighbor. She'd seen Mom crying in her car outside the apartment complex. She was worried but didn't know how to help. The image of Mom alone in her car, having lost another piece of stability, made my chest tight. Dad noticed my distraction and took the phone again. He read the message and shook his head dismissively. He started explaining how Mom's behavior was exactly why the custody had changed, why I needed stable influences like Veronica. His words felt rehearsed, probably fed to him by Veronica over months of manipulation. The waiting room TV switched to the news. A story about healthcare fraud made Dad change the channel quickly, but I'd seen enough. A woman arrested for using surgery funds for cosmetic procedures. The parallel to Veronica was obvious, but Dad remained oblivious, or perhaps he chose to be. Veronica's mother returned from the gift shop with a teddy bear for the baby. She'd also bought a Big Sister t-shirt in my size. She held it up proudly, insisting I try it on over my clothes. When I hesitated, she pouted about my lack of enthusiasm for my new role. I pulled the shirt on to avoid more drama. It was pink with glittery letters, nothing I'd ever wear voluntarily. Veronica's mother immediately took photos, directing me to smile, to look excited. The forced photography session felt like another form of control, creating evidence of my supposed acceptance. She posted the photos immediately with captions about family bonding and new beginnings. Within minutes, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were commenting about how happy I looked, how wonderful it was to see me embracing change. The false narrative spread faster than I could have corrected it. The surgery waiting screen showed 15 minutes remaining. Dad suggested we sign the papers now so everything would be ready when Veronica woke up. He'd already signed his portions, leaving only my signature lines blank. The pen felt heavy in my hand. I thought about the evidence on my phone. 43 attachments documenting Veronica's lies. Screenshots of her texts to Lucas about their plans. Bank statements showing the cosmetic surgery payments. All useless without internet access. All worthless if I signed these papers and gave her more control. My phone buzzed with an email notification. For a moment, hope surged. Had the Wi-Fi returned? But it was just a cached message from MIT about deferment deadlines. Another reminder of what I'd lost. Another deadline I'd miss because of Veronica's schemes. Dad grew impatient with my hesitation. He started talking about trust and family loyalty. Oh my gosh, the way they're totally rewriting reality on social media while she sits there helpless is making me want to scream. That part where Veronica's mom is filming Dad and calling him a devoted husband, while the real truth is stuck on her phone with no internet. This is like watching a nightmare unfold. Veronica's mother added her own pressure, mentioning how disappointed Veronica would be if she woke up to unsigned papers. They tag-teamed their manipulation. Years of practice evident in their coordination. I signed the withdrawal form. The pen moved across the paper like it belonged to someone else. $15,000 gone. The last of Mom's savings transferred to Veronica's control. Dad smiled and gathered the papers quickly, as if afraid I'd change my mind. But I didn't sign the others. Not the medical forms or the guardian permissions. Dad's face darkened, but before he could speak, an alarm sounded. Not emergency level, just a notification. Veronica's surgery was complete. The doctor would be out shortly to update us. The waiting room energy shifted. Dad jumped up, pacing nervously. Veronica's mother fixed her makeup and prepared her phone for the announcement photos. I sat frozen. The unsigned forms spread before me, knowing the real battle was just beginning. The doctor appeared in surgical scrubs, looking tired but pleased. He announced that both mother and baby were doing well. The C-section had been routine, no complications. Dad nearly collapsed with relief. Veronica's mother shrieked with joy and hugged everyone nearby, including strangers. In the chaos, I pocketed the unsigned forms. Dad was too distracted to notice. He followed the doctor to discuss recovery details while Veronica's mother called relatives. I was temporarily forgotten, just another piece of waiting room furniture. My phone finally showed 3 bars of signal. I quickly opened the email app, but the hospital's main Wi-Fi remained down. I tried sending through cellular, but the attachments were too large. Each attempt failed with an error message. The evidence remained trapped while Veronica recovered. A nurse appeared to escort us to the recovery room. Dad remembered the papers and asked for them. I pretended to search my pockets, buying time. He grew frustrated, but the nurse insisted we follow immediately. Family could only visit in short windows. The papers would have to wait. We walked through sterile hallways that all looked identical. The nurse chatted about the baby's measurements and health scores. Perfect numbers, she said. A blessing after such a difficult pregnancy. I bit my tongue, knowing Veronica's difficult pregnancy had been entirely performed for sympathy. Outside the recovery room, we had to sanitize and wear masks. Through the window, I could see Veronica propped up in bed, holding a tiny bundle. She looked genuinely exhausted. Probably the first authentic expression I'd seen from her in months. Even master manipulators couldn't fake post-surgery fatigue. We entered quietly. Veronica's eyes were closed, but she opened them when Dad approached. Her smile was weak but triumphant. She'd gotten everything she wanted. The money, the baby, the control. Dad kissed her forehead and whispered something about being proud of her strength. The baby was tiny, wrinkled, perfect. My half-sister who would grow up in Veronica's web of lies. I felt a surge of protective instinct followed by helplessness. How could I protect her when I couldn't even protect myself or Mom? Veronica noticed me standing back and gestured for me to come closer. Her voice was hoarse as she introduced me to my sister. The baby's eyes were closed. Her tiny fist curled against her cheek. Despite everything, I felt my heart soften. She was innocent in all this. Veronica's mother burst in with balloons and flowers, destroying the quiet moment. She immediately started photographing and directing us into poses. The nurse tried to limit visitors, but Veronica's mother claimed special circumstances. Rules bent around their family, as always. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom asking if I was okay. I couldn't respond with everyone watching. Veronica noticed and asked who was texting. Her voice was weak, but her eyes were sharp, watching for my reaction. Even post-surgery, she was gathering information. Dad reminded me about the unsigned papers. He'd brought copies from the waiting room. Veronica's eyes lit up with interest. She asked what papers, playing innocent. Dad explained about the medical forms and guardian permissions. Her surprise seemed genuine. Had she not orchestrated this part? Veronica's mother jumped in, explaining how she'd prepared the forms to help protect our growing family. Veronica nodded slowly, processing. I realized her mother had been working her own angles, possibly without Veronica's full knowledge. Manipulators manipulating each other. The nurse returned and insisted on limiting visitors. Only one person could stay. Dad immediately volunteered, but Veronica touched his arm. She suggested he go handle the insurance paperwork while her mother stayed. She needed female support, she said. Dad reluctantly agreed. As he prepared to leave, he pressed the forms into my hands again. He whispered that I should sign them before leaving, that it would mean so much to Veronica. I nodded non-committally and followed him out. In the hallway, he hugged me and said he was proud of how I was handling things. Alone in the corridor, I unfolded the forms again. Reading more carefully, I found clauses I'd missed before. Signing would give Veronica access to any trust funds established in my name, control over educational decisions including college choices, and the ability to claim me as a dependent for tax purposes. My phone rang. Sandra again. I answered, walking toward a quiet corner. She explained that Mom had calmed down but was still devastated about the apartment. They were trying to find other options, but everything required deposits Mom couldn't afford. The $15,000 I'd just signed away would have solved everything. I told Sandra about signing the withdrawal form. She went quiet, then sighed heavily. She understood the pressure I was under but worried about the precedent. If I gave in on this, what would Veronica demand next? The question hung between us, unanswered. After hanging up, I wandered the hospital halls. In the cafeteria, I bought a sandwich I didn't want, just to have something to do. At a corner table, I spread out the unsigned forms again. Each signature line felt like a trap. Another piece of autonomy surrendered. My email app showed the draft still waiting. 43 attachments, months of evidence, all useless without internet. I tried the cafeteria Wi-Fi, but it required a code. The cashier didn't know it. The IT desk was closed until tomorrow. Every avenue blocked. I returned to find Dad in the financial office, dealing with insurance forms. He looked stressed, rubbing his temples. The administrator was explaining coverage gaps and co-pays, real medical costs, not Veronica's fabricated ones. I wondered if he saw the irony. He noticed me and waved me over. The administrator needed my signature as a listed dependent. More papers, more control given away. But these were legitimate, just updating insurance records. I signed where indicated, each signature feeling like a small defeat. Dad asked about the other forms. I said I'd left them in Veronica's room. The truth would come out eventually. We returned to find Veronica's room full of visitors. Her yoga friends had arrived with crystals and essential oils. They were performing some kind of blessing ceremony over the baby. The nurse looked frustrated but couldn't get them to leave. Veronica basked in the attention, playing the exhausted but grateful new mother. She caught my eye and smiled, that calculating look I knew too well. She asked if I wanted to hold my sister. Everyone turned to watch my response. I couldn't refuse without looking heartless. I carefully took the baby, supporting her head as Mom had taught me with cousins' kids. She was so light, so fragile. Her eyes opened briefly, unfocused but somehow seeing. My throat tightened with unexpected emotion. Veronica watched my reaction closely. She mentioned how natural I looked, how helpful I'd be with night feedings. Her friends cooed about what a wonderful big sister I'd make. The narrative was being established. I was the built-in babysitter, the helper, the support system. Someone suggested a group photo. Veronica's mother orchestrated us into position. Me holding the baby, Veronica reaching toward us, Dad behind her chair. The perfect family portrait. Except Mom was in a motel, crying over lost opportunities. The photo session continued with different combinations. Each flash felt like documentation of a lie, but I smiled, played the part. The baby stayed calm in my arms, occasionally making small sounds. Despite everything, I felt protective of her. Veronica's yoga friends started discussing the nursery plans. They'd already picked themes and colors. The room would need complete renovation, they said. Expensive renovation. I knew where that money would come from. The accounts Dad had just given her access to. One friend mentioned seeing Mom at the grocery store last week. She'd looked tired, she said, with a meaningful glance at me. Veronica quickly changed the subject, but the damage was done. They all knew about Mom's situation and judged her for it. The nurse finally succeeded in clearing the room. Only immediate family could stay. The yoga friends left reluctantly, promising to return tomorrow with more gifts. Veronica air-kissed each one, the perfect hostess even from a hospital bed. Alone with family, Veronica's mask slipped slightly. She winced as she adjusted position, real pain showing through. The baby started fussing and she looked overwhelmed. For a moment, she seemed like any new mother, scared, exhausted, uncertain. But the moment passed. She composed herself and asked Dad about the insurance paperwork. He assured her everything was handled. She smiled and mentioned the medical forms her mother had prepared. Had I signed them yet? Her eyes found mine, waiting. I said I'd forgotten them in the cafeteria. Her smile tightened, but she nodded understandingly. Pregnancy brain was contagious, she joked. Everyone laughed except me. I knew she'd seen through the excuse. Veronica's mother returned with coffee and snacks. She'd been to the gift shop again, buying out their baby section. Pink everything. Blankets, outfits, toys the baby wouldn't need for months. All charged to Dad's credit card, I noticed. She started planning the homecoming, listing everything needed. A new car seat, the expensive one. Nursery furniture from specific boutiques. A baby nurse for the first month. The costs added up to more than Mom made in 3 months. Dad agreed to everything, still riding the new father high. He didn't question prices or necessity. Veronica and her mother exchanged satisfied looks. The financial manipulation would continue, just with baby items instead of surgery. My phone battery was dying. I'd forgotten my charger in the morning chaos. The email draft would disappear if my phone died. All the evidence lost. I asked Dad for his charger, but he'd left it in the car. Veronica offered hers too sweetly. I knew it was a trap, but had no choice. I plugged in my phone and watched her watching me. She asked about the apartment situation with Mom, her concern perfectly pitched. Dad looked confused. I hadn't told him about Mom's housing crisis. I kept the explanation vague, but Veronica pressed for details. She expressed sympathy about Mom's struggles, suggesting maybe this was a blessing. Mom needed to learn independence, she said. The same words Dad had used earlier. Their manipulation was coordinated. The baby needed feeding. The nurse helped Veronica position her correctly. It was an intimate moment, but Veronica's mother filmed it anyway. Content for her social media, building the perfect mother narrative. Everything was performance with them. My phone charged slowly. 10%, 15. Each percentage point meant the evidence survived a bit longer. But what good was evidence I couldn't send? The hospital Wi-Fi remained stubbornly offline. My cellular data was throttled from overuse. Veronica finished feeding and passed the baby to Dad. He held her awkwardly, but with obvious love. Whatever his faults, he genuinely cared about his children. I wondered if that included me anymore, or if I'd been replaced by this newer, easier model. The nurse mentioned visiting hours were ending soon. Veronica suggested I stay overnight, help with the baby. There was a fold-out chair, she said. I could be useful. The trap was obvious. Keep me close, monitor my actions, prevent me from helping Mom. I declined, citing school tomorrow. A lie. It was Saturday. But Veronica didn't challenge it. She just smiled and said she understood. Teenagers needed their sleep. Her mother offered to drive me home. Another monitoring opportunity. Dad insisted on driving me himself. He wanted to talk, he said. I knew this meant more pressure about the forms, but at least I'd be away from Veronica's direct observation. Small victories mattered now. We gathered our things to leave. Veronica called me back for one more hug. As I leaned in, she whispered that she knew about the email draft. My blood went cold. She smiled sweetly and said we'd talk tomorrow about the best way forward for everyone. I pulled back, trying to read her expression, but she'd already turned to the baby, dismissing me. The threat was clear though. She knew about my evidence and wasn't worried. That confidence terrified me more than anger would have. Dad chatted during the elevator ride about the baby's name. They'd chosen something trendy and meaningless. I nodded along, mind racing. How did Veronica know about the email? Had she seen my phone screen? Did she have access to my accounts? In the parking garage, Dad's car felt like another trap, but I had no choice. As we drove, he talked about the future, how Veronica would need help, how family supported each other, how signing those forms was the mature choice. I watched the city pass by, thinking about Mom alone in her car, about the apartment she'd lost, about the college fund spent on Veronica's surgeries, about my half-sister who would grow up in this web of lies. The evidence on my phone felt heavier than ever. Dad pulled into a fast food drive-thru, saying I must be hungry. I wasn't, but agreed anyway. Anything to delay going home. As we waited for food, he pulled out the unsigned forms again. Just sign them now, he urged. Get it over with. I took the forms but didn't sign. Instead, I asked why Veronica needed guardian permissions when he was perfectly capable of making decisions. His explanation was weak. Something about convenience and emergency situations. The real reason was control. We both knew it. My phone buzzed with a notification. the email app showing draft saved. But below it, another notification I didn't recognize. Someone had accessed my cloud storage recently. During the time my phone was charging, Veronica had used her charger to hack my accounts. The realization hit hard. She'd seen everything, every screenshot, every saved receipt, every piece of evidence. She knew exactly what I had and wasn't worried. Why? What did she know that I didn't? Dad noticed my distress and asked what was wrong. I couldn't explain without revealing everything, so I claimed it was about Mom, which was partially true. He softened slightly, saying Mom would be okay eventually. She just needed to accept the new reality. We ate in silence in the parking lot. The food tasted like cardboard, but I forced it down. Dad kept glancing at the unsigned forms on the dashboard. The pressure was constant, wearing me down. Maybe that was the strategy. Exhaustion as manipulation. My phone rang. Mom's number. Dad frowned, but I answered anyway. Her voice was stronger now, apologizing for the earlier breakdown. She'd found another apartment possibility, viewing it tomorrow. She tried to sound hopeful, but I heard the exhaustion underneath. I told her about the baby, keeping details minimal. She congratulated me on becoming a big sister, her voice catching slightly. She'd wanted more children, but Dad had refused. Now he had one with someone else. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. After hanging up, Dad launched into another lecture about boundaries and enabling Mom's behavior. I let him talk, too tired to argue. The unsigned forms sat between us like a test I was failing. He'd report back to Veronica about my resistance. We finally drove home. The house felt different, knowing a baby would soon fill it. Veronica's touches were everywhere. New furniture, different art, relocated family photos. Mom had been erased and replaced. Soon I would be too if I didn't comply. Dad suggested I get some rest and think about the forms overnight. He left them on the kitchen counter, a reminder of what was expected. I nodded and escaped to my room, what was left of it. Veronica had already started storing baby supplies in there. I plugged in my phone properly and opened the email draft. Everything was still there but felt compromised. If Veronica had seen it all, she'd have counter moves planned. The evidence might be worthless now. Months of work possibly destroyed by one charging cable. A text from an unknown number appeared. Just a link, no message. I knew better than to click strange links but recognized the preview. It was a social media post from Veronica's account. Against my better judgment, I opened it. The post was from an hour ago, while she was supposedly recovering. A heartfelt message about becoming a mother, overcoming health challenges, and building a loving blended family. The comments were overwhelmingly supportive. The narrative was set. But what caught my attention was a comment from Lucas. Oh my gosh, Lucas just showed up in the story. I can't believe Veronica hacked into her accounts through that charging cable. That's so sneaky and scary. Congratulating her on the baby and mentioning he looked forward to training sessions resuming soon. Public acknowledgement of their connection. Why would he risk that unless... Another text. This time a screenshot of a document. A training contract between Veronica and Lucas dated 2 years ago. Legitimate business arrangement. Payment records for actual sessions. Everything above board. My evidence of their relationship suddenly looked like misinterpreted professional interaction. I realized what had happened. Veronica had known I was gathering evidence. She'd cleaned up her tracks, created documentation, established plausible explanations. The cosmetic surgery receipts could be explained as medical necessity. The texts to Lucas reframed as business communication. My phone rang. Veronica's number. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was sweet, thanking me for being there today, mentioning how much the baby already loved me, hoping we could move forward as a family. The subtext was clear: surrender or be destroyed. I sat in my room, surrounded by baby supplies that had replaced my belongings. The unsigned forms waited on the kitchen counter. Mom waited in a motel. The evidence waited in my email draft. Everything suspended, waiting for my next move. But I was out of moves. Veronica had won before I'd even realized we were playing. The surgery money was gone. The guardianship forms would be signed eventually, through pressure or exhaustion. Mom would struggle while Veronica thrived. The baby would grow up believing whatever story Veronica crafted. I opened the email draft one more time. 43 attachments proving nothing anymore. Each piece of evidence countered by Veronica's careful planning. She'd let me gather it all, thinking I was clever. Really, I'd been documenting my own obsession, building her case for why I needed therapy. The draft had saved automatically to the cloud, the same cloud Veronica now had access to. She could delete it any time, but probably wouldn't. Better to let me send it. Let me embarrass myself with evidence she'd already neutralized. Let Dad see how disturbed I was. I closed the email app and lay back on my bed. Tomorrow would bring more pressure, more manipulation, more losses. The forms would be signed eventually. Mom would struggle alone. The baby would grow up in Veronica's web, and I would either comply or be cast out entirely. My phone buzzed with one final text from Dad, not Veronica, reminding me about the forms, saying he loved me and wanted what was best, hoping I'd make the right choice, as if there was any choice left at all. The evidence sat in my drafts folder, worthless. The truth sat in my chest, worthless. The fight sat in my heart, fading. Veronica had won with surgical precision, pun intended. All that remained was accepting defeat gracefully, or being destroyed, resisting. I stared at the ceiling until dawn, watching shadows shift across the room. The unsigned forms remained on the kitchen counter. Around 6 a.m., Dad knocked on my door. He entered without waiting for permission, holding the papers and a pen. His hair stuck up at odd angles from sleep. He sat on the edge of my bed and explained that Veronica would be discharged this afternoon. The forms needed to be filed before then. His voice carried that forced patience parents use when they've already decided the outcome. I took the papers and pretended to read them again while he watched. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. She'd found another apartment viewing for this morning. Could I come? The landlord seemed understanding about her situation. I showed Dad the message. His jaw tightened as he reminded me about Veronica coming home today. Family priorities. I got dressed while he waited in the kitchen. Through my window, I saw Veronica's mother's car already in the driveway. She'd arrived early to prepare the house for the homecoming. I could hear her rearranging furniture downstairs, making space for baby equipment. In the kitchen, she'd laid out a breakfast spread like we were celebrating. Fresh fruit, pastries, orange juice in Mom's old pitcher. She hugged me tightly and mentioned how exhausted I looked. Had I slept at all? She'd already posted about the baby's first night in the hospital. Dad pushed the forms across the table again. Veronica's mother watched while buttering toast. I picked up the pen and signed my name slowly on the medical forms. Each letter felt like surrender. Dad smiled and gathered them quickly, tucking them into his briefcase, but I still hadn't signed the guardian permissions. I claimed I needed to read them more carefully first. Dad's smile faltered, but Veronica's mother intervened, suggesting we handle it after bringing the baby home. No need to rush important decisions. My phone rang. Sandra called calling about mom's apartment viewing. I answered despite dad's disapproving look. She explained that mom was already at the building, too anxious to wait. The landlord would only hold it until 10 a.m. 3 other families were interested. I stood to leave, but dad blocked the doorway. He reminded me about Veronica's homecoming, about family obligations. Veronica's mother added that they'd planned a small welcome party, just close family and friends. My absence would be noticed and discussed. The standoff lasted several seconds. Then Veronica's mother suggested a compromise. I could visit mom briefly, but needed to return by noon for the homecoming. She'd even drive me, ensuring I'd return on time. The trap was obvious, but I had no choice. During the drive, she talked constantly about the baby, how perfect she was, how Veronica was already such a natural mother, how lucky we all were to witness this blessing. I stared out the window, watching familiar streets pass by. She dropped me at the apartment building with strict instructions to meet her in 45 minutes. I found mom in the lobby with Sandra. Mom looked smaller somehow, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. Her eyes were red and puffy. She hugged me tightly, apologizing for needing help again. The apartment was small but clean. Second floor, decent neighborhood, close to her work. The landlord seemed kind, explaining the lease terms patiently. Mom's hands shook as she signed the papers. I co-signed as her emergency contact, feeling the weight of that responsibility. Sandra had scraped together the deposit from several friends, just enough to secure the place. Mom would have keys next week. A fresh start, Sandra said encouragingly, but I saw mom's face when she looked at the tiny bedroom. This wasn't the life she'd planned. Veronica's mother texted repeatedly during the showing, updates about the homecoming preparations, photos of the decorated living room, reminders about the time. I showed mom the messages and her face crumpled. She understood what I was returning to. Outside the building, mom held my hands tightly. She thanked me for coming, for helping despite everything. She promised things would get better once she was settled. Maybe by next semester she could help with college. We both knew that was unlikely. Veronica's mother arrived precisely on time, honking impatiently. Mom watched from the sidewalk as I got in the car. Through the rear window, I saw her standing there alone, growing smaller as we drove away. Sandra had already left for work. Back home, the house buzzed with activity. Veronica's yoga friends had arrived early, transforming the living room into a welcome shrine. Pink balloons, flowers, a banner reading, "Welcome home, Princess." They'd even hired a photographer to document the homecoming. Dad met us at the door, practically vibrating with excitement. He'd picked up Veronica and the baby an hour ago, but kept them in the car, waiting for everyone to gather. This needed to be perfect, he explained. A moment to remember forever. I stood with the welcoming committee as Dad helped Veronica from the car. She moved slowly, playing up the post-surgery weakness. The baby was bundled in an expensive carrier, barely visible under blankets. Everyone cooed and took photos as they made their way inside. The photographer directed us into various groupings. Veronica on the couch with the baby, Dad hovering protectively. The grandmothers on either side. Me in the background, holding a balloon someone had shoved into my hand. Each flash documented the false narrative of our happy family. Veronica's friends had prepared lunch. Organic everything. Specially designed for post-birth recovery. They served Veronica like she was royalty, adjusting pillows, refilling water, offering foot massages. She accepted it all graciously, occasionally wincing for effect. The baby slept through most of it. When she did wake, everyone jumped to help. Diaper changes became group events. Feeding required multiple assistants. I watched from the kitchen, seeing my future mapped out. The built-in babysitter, always available, always expected to help. Dad pulled me aside during the chaos. He mentioned the guardian permission forms again. Veronica had asked about them specifically. It would mean so much to her if I signed them today, making the homecoming complete. He'd already put them in my room. I escaped upstairs, claiming I needed the bathroom. In my room, the forms waited on my desk. Next to them, a gift from Veronica, a framed photo of me holding the baby at the hospital. The message was clear: accept your role or lose your place entirely. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number, a screenshot of mom's social media taken this morning. She'd posted about new beginnings and staying strong, but Veronica's friends had already screenshotted it, adding their own commentary about bitter ex-wives and toxic behavior. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Veronica's mother appeared, checking on me. She noticed the unsigned forms and asked if I needed help understanding them. Her tone suggested she knew exactly why I was hesitating. She sat on my bed, patting the space beside her. She explained how hard this must be, accepting change. But families evolved. Veronica loved me like her own daughter. These forms were just paperwork, making official what was already true. Fighting would only hurt everyone, especially the baby. Did I want my sister growing up in conflict? The manipulation was masterful. Every word chosen to maximize guilt. I stared at the forms while she waited. Finally, I picked up the pen. She smiled encouragingly as I signed the guardian permissions. Another piece of autonomy surrendered to keep the peace. She hugged me tightly, praising my maturity. Then she picked up the forms and left quickly, probably afraid I'd change my mind. I sat alone in my room, listening to the celebration continue downstairs, the sounds of my new reality. Eventually, I had to return to the party. Veronica made a show of thanking me for the signed forms, loud enough for everyone to hear. She called me the best big sister, her voice carrying perfectly sincere emotion. The audience ate it up. As the afternoon wore on, guests began leaving. Each departure required extensive goodbyes and promises to visit soon. Veronica played the exhausted new mother perfectly, grateful but overwhelmed. Finally, only family remained. That's when Veronica's mask slipped slightly. She mentioned needing to discuss household changes. My room would become the nursery extension. I could move to the basement or share with the baby. My choice, she said generously. Dad nodded along, seeing nothing wrong with displacing me. I chose the basement. At least I'd have privacy there, even if it meant living in an unfinished space. Veronica smiled approvingly and mentioned we'd start moving things tomorrow. No rush, but the baby needed proper space. Everyone agreed this made sense. The baby started crying. Veronica looked at me expectantly. The fact they come back to this insane welcome home party with pink balloons and a photographer like Veronica is some kind of celebrity instead of a lying thief is crazy, bro. Then the way they're making this poor girl sign guardian papers while guilt-tripping her about being a good sister. Now they're kicking her out of her own room to live in the basement. My first test as the official big sister. I picked up my half-sister carefully, bouncing her gently like mom had taught me. She settled quickly, her tiny hand gripping my finger. Veronica took photos, already crafting social media posts about sisterly bonds. I felt trapped between protecting this innocent baby and protecting myself. Every interaction would be documented, twisted, used, but I couldn't punish my sister for her mother's sins. That evening, while Veronica napped, I started packing my room. room, box by box, erasing my presence from the space I'd lived in for years. Dad helped briefly, mentioning how proud he was of my adjustment. He had no idea what I was really adjusting to. I found old photos while packing. Mom and dad in happier times. Family vacations before Veronica. My acceptance letter to MIT, now worthless. Each memory felt like evidence of a life stolen, but I packed them carefully, preserving what I could. Veronica's mother ordered dinner from an expensive restaurant. We ate in shifts, someone always tending the baby. The conversation revolved entirely around infant care and Veronica's recovery. My existence had been reduced to supporting cast. After dinner, I escaped to the basement with my boxes. The space was cold and musty, but mine. I set up a makeshift bedroom in the corner with the finished walls. It wasn't much, but it was away from Veronica's constant observation. My phone had been quiet all day. I checked to find several missed calls from Mom. Her voicemails progressed from hopeful to worried. She'd heard about the homecoming party from mutual friends. Was I okay? Did I need anything? The concern in her voice made my chest tight. I texted her that I was fine, just busy with family stuff. She responded immediately, offering to meet tomorrow if I needed to talk. But I knew Veronica would monitor my movements now. Meeting Mom would be reported as choosing sides. Late that night, I heard the baby crying upstairs, then footsteps heading to my basement door. Dad called down that Veronica needed help. The baby wouldn't settle. Could I try? The expectation was clear. My new role had officially begun. I climbed the stairs and took my sister from an exhausted-looking Veronica. The baby calmed almost immediately in my arms. Veronica exchanged a meaningful look with Dad. See how natural this was? How helpful I could be? The night shift arrangements were already being planned. I walked the hallways with my sister, humming softly. She was so small, so dependent. In a few years, she'd call Veronica Mommy and believe whatever stories she was told about the bitter ex-wife, the jealous daughter, the family that loved her despite her flaws. The baby finally slept. I returned her to Veronica, who thanked me with false warmth. She mentioned we'd need to establish a schedule. School was important, but family came first. I'd need to be available for emergencies. Dad agreed this seemed reasonable. Back in the basement, I lay on my makeshift bed, staring at exposed ceiling beams. My phone showed one new message from Veronica, a link to a family scheduling app where she'd already input my expected babysitting hours. The trap was complete. I opened my email one last time. The draft with all the evidence still sat there. Worthless now, but I couldn't delete it. Maybe someday it would matter. Maybe when my sister was older and started asking questions. Maybe when Dad finally saw through Veronica's performance, but probably not. People believed what they wanted to believe. Dad wanted to believe in his new family. Veronica's friends wanted to believe in her transformation. Even Mom's friends were starting to believe she needed to move on and stop dwelling. My phone battery died. I didn't bother charging it. Tomorrow would bring more of the same. Babysitting duties disguised as bonding. Financial requests disguised as family needs. Gradual erasure disguised as growth. The pattern was set. I thought about Mom and her tiny apartment, about the college fund spent on surgeries, about the life I'd planned versus the life I'd have. But mostly I thought about my sister, sleeping peacefully upstairs, unaware of the web she'd been born into. The next morning arrived too quickly. The baby's cries at 5 a.m. became my alarm clock. I climbed the stairs to find Veronica waiting with a bottle and a grateful smile. She needed to pump, she explained. Could I handle the feeding? Dad had already left for work. I fed my sister in the living room, surrounded by evidence of Veronica's victory. New furniture, redecorated walls, Mom's things erased. The baby drank steadily, her eyes fixed on mine. I wondered what she saw, just another face to trust, or someone who might understand her someday. Veronica emerged looking refreshed, having showered and styled her hair. She took photos of me feeding the baby, posting immediately about her amazing support system. The comments flooded in. How lucky she was, how mature I was being, how beautiful our family looked. She mentioned needing to run errands, important post-birth appointments. Could I watch the baby for a few hours? The request was framed as a question, but we both knew the answer. I nodded, accepting my new reality. Hours passed in a cycle of feeding, changing, soothing. Veronica's mother arrived to help, which meant supervising my caretaking while updating social media. She corrected my technique constantly, establishing her expertise over mine. When Veronica returned, she carried shopping bags from expensive boutiques. Self-care was important for new mothers, she explained. The receipts peeking out showed amounts that would have covered Mom's rent, but I said nothing, just handed over the baby. That afternoon, while organizing the nursery extension in my former room, I found my old journal. Pages full of plans for MIT, dreams about becoming an engineer, notes about saving money for school. I packed it away quickly before anyone could see. Veronica called me to help with bath time. Another photo opportunity. Another chance to document my cooperation. I supported the baby carefully while Veronica directed the scene. Everything performed for an invisible audience. Days blurred together. Wake, feed, change, soothe, sleep briefly, repeat. School became an afterthought. Teachers noticed my exhaustion, but accepted the explanation about helping with a new sibling. My grades slipped steadily, but no one intervened. Mom texted occasionally, careful not to seem intrusive. She'd settled into her apartment. Work was going well. She missed me, but understood I had obligations. The distance between us grew with each carefully worded message. One evening, while Veronica attended a mommy yoga class, Dad tried to talk to me about college. Community college was a great option, he said. I could live at home, help with the baby, save money. The MIT dream was quietly buried under practical considerations. I agreed because fighting was pointless. The money was gone. The opportunity lost. My future had been rewritten by Veronica's schemes and Dad's choices. All that remained was making the best of what was left. Veronica returned from yoga glowing with false accomplishment. She'd made wonderful connections, she announced. Other mothers who understood the challenges. They'd invited her to join their group permanently. More social capital accumulated. That night, I couldn't sleep. The baby was quiet, but my mind raced. I thought about sending the email evidence to someone, anyone, but who would care? And what would it accomplish now? The damage was done. The family restructured. The narrative set. I crept upstairs and stood outside the nursery. My sister slept peacefully, unaware of everything. In 18 years, she'd need college money too. Would Veronica protect it or spend it? Would Dad learn from his mistakes or repeat them? The questions had no answers. I returned to the basement and lay awake until dawn. Another day of servitude disguised as family duty awaited. Another day of watching Veronica thrive on stolen resources. Another day of pretending this was normal. But somewhere, Mom was getting ready for her shift, building her life back piece by piece. And someday, maybe I'd rebuild too. Not the life I'd planned, but something salvaged from the wreckage. It wasn't justice, but it was survival. My phone buzzed with the morning alarm. Time to start again. Feed, change, soothe, pretend. The cycle continued. Would continue until I found a way out. But for now, I climbed the stairs to meet my obligations. The baby was already crying. Veronica appeared in the hallway, looking perfectly exhausted for Dad's benefit. She handed me the bottle with practiced gratitude. I took my sister and began another day in the life Veronica had crafted for us all. Oh wow, that tiny bit of hope at the end about maybe rebuilding someday and knowing Mom is out there getting stronger really got me. That's all for this video. See you in the next.